I don't know how many teachers from Covenant, I can't even remember, have said the words, I can't believe I was able to blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And that's just, I'm not going to say it's a testament to our training. That's just a testament to training in general, right? Sure. Planting seeds in your primitive brain and having your primitive brain be able to respond under stressful moments. Every law enforcement military guy that may hear this understands what I mean. Like, just training is key to being able to perform. And they did. When I finally got to meet with the faculty, probably one of the hardest nights of my life. It was a week to the day. The board of the school asked me to come meet with the board. And then they asked me to meet with the faculty and unpack the whole thing. And then they asked me to stay and meet with the entire parent community and answer questions, which you can imagine that was not a fun day. Mm. But I told the teachers, like, I've never been like more proud of a group in my life. And the last week has been terrible because I told them, I said, I feel like a Super Bowl winning coach who has been separated from his team since they won the game.
From the business capital of the world, the Big Apple, New York, Middle Tennessee, it says here. Sounds riveting. Yeah. This is the Mostly Middle Tennessee Business Podcast, a podcast about Middle Tennessee business owners and professionals. Mostly.
That's right. Thank you, Mr. Matt Wilson from the Mostly Marketing Podcast for offering the voiceover for that. It's kind of a trade that we do. I did his and he did mine. Old radio buddy of mine going way back. Yes, this is the Mostly Middle Tennessee Business Podcast, where we talk to Middle Tennessee business owners, professionals, entrepreneurs. We have real conversations that meander, meaning that we may have offshoots, we may have tangents, rabbit holes. That's where the good meat and the stuff is. This is a video and audio podcast where you can check us out at MMTBP.com. Or if you want to watch us, you can go there and see us. Or if you just want to listen to it, all your links are going to be right there, MMTBP.com. We even have an application link that you can be on the show. Submit yourself if you think it'd be a good fit. I am your host, Jim McCarthy with JimMcCarthyVoiceovers.com and It'sYourShow.co, where we produce podcasts just like this one. And today, I'm very excited because an old friend of mine he's been busy. And he's finally made a comeback. He's been on the show before in another iteration known as What's Your Problem, back in an old building. That's you were like in the beginning of this show, this whole journey.
Still honored.
Brink Fidler with Defend Systems and God-fearing gun owners. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me back.
So if you guys are interested, this is a good episode for you to listen to for somebody who has been building a business for the past 5 to 10 years, I would say, right?
About 7, yep.
7 years. So you're past that 5-year mark in building a business. It really got sidelined with COVID, as a lot of businesses did, because it requires a lot of in-person type of applications, I guess. Because what you do is you go around to all sorts of companies, churches, schools, and teach active shooter mitigation and bleeding control training, like personal defense empowerment training, if you will.
That's about 85% of our business, yeah.
It's all the training that you do, yeah.
The active violence mitigation and the rapid response medical, we call it. So yeah, that's most of the business. And then we also do some law enforcement training and then security consulting. So if you have people that are going to build a new building, whether that's a school, church, business, doesn't matter. And then some residential consulting as well in that space. But yeah, the active violence mitigation is certainly the biggest vertical we've grown in.
And for a good reason. Because, here we are in a society. You hear me talk about pendulum a lot. They talk about this particular time in culture happens about every 80 years, where we go through what they call in the book a we zenith, where everybody's attitude is not me, it's you. You're the problem. And we see a lot of that happening. As a result, it's a lot of violence escalation in the country, in the Western hemisphere, if you will. And getting back to how you and I met was by a podcast that you had called Tips, Tactics, and Tools. And you also have another brand called the God-fearing Gun Owners fashion brand.
Yeah, apparel. I'd say apparel.
Not fashion.
More so than fashion, but yeah, it's an apparel brand, correct. But yeah, I've never, and I think you'd agree, I've never seen volatility like we have right now in society, ever.
You remember when we had the author on your podcast, Michael Drew. You remember a lot of that particular episode, what he talked about? Anything special come to mind?
No, I mean, it's been a minute forever, so I don't remember.
And after COVID kind of subsided, you got really busy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, right. Yeah. When you have a business model that requires people to gather in groups for training, COVID put a damper on that. Thankfully, the law enforcement side of the house, the law enforcement training kept me alive because the cops can't stop training because of a virus, thankfully. So that, and then the consulting and things like that are what kept me alive. But once we came out of COVID and people started to reintegrate in society and violence shot through the roof, then we got very busy.
Well, of course, I always like to have you on because we're friends. We've been friends for a long time now. You're always a great conversation nonetheless. But there was one incident that happened in the last 2 years here in Nashville, known as the covenantschool event. Mm-hmm. And I distinctly remember sitting in B&I, our weekly meeting where we get together with other business owners and professionals and we share referrals. And I think by happenstance, I had found out that your company was the one that did the training for that school. And I texted you and I said, "Hey man, I hope you're okay." And you were kind of taking it hard.
Yep.
And when you responded in kind to my text, you were like, "I'm just, processing this." I think you literally said, "I'm really kind of taking this to heart." And of course, you're human, And I'm like, I literally kind of sat back in my chair in the meeting and I said, "My gosh, what do I say?" I didn't know what to say. And all of a sudden it just dawned on me. I'm like, these things aren't going to be perfect. One thing I could say for sure though, is that without you doing the training you did, would have been a whole hell of a lot worse. Well, and I hope it made you feel better at least, it was a tragic situation nonetheless.
Yeah. So I want to make sure and give credit where credit is due. The teacher's ability to perform under that kind of stress is what made the difference. And people talk about our training a lot and that's fine, but I've seen police officers freeze under less stress than those teachers were put under. So I want to make sure that everybody knows that their ability to perform that day is the difference maker. Law enforcement did an awesome job when they got there. No question. Rex, Jeff, Michael Clauso, all those guys. But what most people don't understand is that on the body camera footage, when you see Rex stick the key in the door, that's 12 minutes into the attack. Yeah. So, and we'll circle back on all that in some detail here in a minute, but yeah, it hits hard for a number of reasons. It wasn't just that we trained that school. Katherine, the head of school that was killed, was a friend of mine, and then the little boy that was killed, his name is William Kinney. His family are friends of mine. So without it being my own child's school, it hits about as close as it can.
It reminds me a lot of the Sandy Hook incident that happened in 2012. That happened and it kind of hit us in 3 different phases of life because we had kids that were going to elementary school around the same age. It happened literally one town over from where we grew up, my wife and I. And the day that it happened, I was listening to Michael Del Giorno. I was still working for radio at the time. He broke the news, and I was going to meet my wife for lunch that day in Cool Springs. And while we were eating at the time, I don't think I had a smartphone. I was literally putting up whatever phone I had. I was trying to get the news and stuff. And she could just read it on my face because that's when the body count came out, the final body count. And I must have just, going, "Oh, gosh." And she looked at me and she said, "How many?" She didn't even know what I was responding to. And I said, 22. And she just says, "I just feel like I know one of them." And sure enough, she did.
Yeah.
So it was just, it's crazy how it hits you on those types of fronts,
Yeah. That final number ended up being 26, 20 kids and 6 adults from that event.
I think it was just an updated number at that point.
Yeah.
It was just 22.
Still, we're talking about children. And that one unfolded actually a lot faster than Covenant. Sandy Hook. So 9:34 a.m. is when he walked up to the front door. It was locked, shot out the side light, entered the building. So 9:34, 9:35 was our first 911 call. 9:39, the first cop arrived. 9:40, those cops heard the final gunshot. So that's the length of time.
6 minutes.
Yeah, and 154 rounds of ammo.
Wow.
Covenant, 14 minutes, and almost the exact same number of rounds of ammo, 152. So, people knowing what to do in the moment is the biggest difference maker. That's where the data continues to point us. It's not in all this other stuff we think about when it comes to active violence event. The data continues to support that the people in the event knowing what to do is where the real difference is made. And very, very sadly, that was tested on March 27th of last year. But they did a remarkable job. Everyone that she killed at Covenant was killed in under 3 minutes from her entering the building. So it was less than 3 minutes on 2 floors with 3 magazine changes. Once they realized what was happening in the building, she didn't get anybody after that.
Right.
But she was there an additional 11 minutes. So again, those teachers are pretty amazing people.
How long did that event transpire from the point that you trained them? What was the timeline?
A year to the day.
Oh, wow. So literally a year before.
Well, March 28th, which of course is a year to the day. Right. So yeah, March 28th.
And they still, like, even your training to study reverberated with them. I mean, for a school to come to you, what's their initial like feeling and kind of their posture in a way? I mean, is it like, I can't believe we actually have to have this kind of training in this day and age, but it sounds like and looks like we're going to have it. Is that kind of the demeanor?
I'd say it depends on the organization and what experiences they have had. If you're talking about in 2023 in the Middle Tennessee area, no, that was not the response at all. It was like, we have to do this.
Right.
But a lot of schools are that way. They understand this is a real threat. They understand the likelihood of it happening is super small.
Yeah.
But this is, super low probability, but super high impact, right?
Yeah.
And they know there's something they can do. And I find that a lot of heads of school mistakenly think, hey, we can't put this in front of our faculty. This is too much.
Yeah.
And they're right in certain programs because they're not done well or they don't know their audience. But what we find from dealing with so many teachers is they want this knowledge. They crave this knowledge because these are their kids too. Yeah. If you think about why do people get into the teaching profession? It's certainly not for the money.
Yeah.
So these are their kids too. A lot of these teachers and faculty members spend more time with these kids than their own families do, depending on whether or not they're involved in athletics and all those things. So they want this knowledge. They want it bad because they want to protect these kids. But it just has to be done in a certain way where you can know your audience, understand your audience, and reach them. And that's something we take a lot of pride in, is knowing our audience. And the feedback from the over 200 schools that we've trained to date across the country has been that they say you really know your audience.
And as you see these things play out, we're probably getting one notable event a year now, it seems. I don't know if those are true numbers. I'm going by my experience of what I see. We just had one in Georgia last week. And of course, the Trump assassination attempt. You have all these different events that are happening. Do you have like the optics of what you see on Twitter and all the social media of, enough with the thoughts and prayers, we need more legislation for gun control, things of that nature. Teachers don't need to be armed. I mean, you're seeing a lot more teachers that are clamoring, I want to be armed. Is that what you're saying?
I would say armed with knowledge, not necessarily armed with a firearm. Right. And I don't disagree. Like on the arming teachers bill that passed here in Tennessee this past legislative session, I think that needed some work. And I don't really want a teacher who's in a classroom with a bunch of kids leaving those kids to go hunt down a gunman with an insufficient weapon system. If we're giving them just a little whatever small frame semi-automatic with no spare mags, then you're not giving them a gunfight gun, right? No. Like if you're going to send them to a gunfight, train them for a gunfight and give them a gunfight gun and gunfight tools and all those things. So I find these teachers, most do not have the desire to go armed. Some do. Smaller rural districts where police are a long way away, they do. But I think there's a conversation that needs to be had there about the most effective way we do that. I'm not against it. It just, there's things we can do to be better in that.
It's got to be fleshed out.
Yeah, well, I mean, and the bill that passed, I would say, is a 5 out of a 10. 4 years ago when I testified against it, it was a 1. So it made some progress, but I do find that just because of the world we live in, that the teachers don't want to leave the classroom. They typically love the classroom, but they want to be able to protect their kids and know the best way to do that.
Right.
But it's different for every organization as far as how they feel when they find out about us.
So, I mean, in a lot of your situations, you're not walking out of the building. I would imagine you walk out of the scenario when you're done with all the training and you're kind of putting the bow on it and be like, okay, I feel like good about this. They know they're armed with the knowledge. Does it ever cross your mind that this could actually happen prior to what happened in Covenant?
Yes. I knew, I got asked this by the media right after Covenant happened. I knew eventually, just because of the growth we're having, that eventually one of our clients was probably going to experience an active violence event.
Right. If
you'd have told me it was that little school on the hill in Green Hills, I'd have said no way. Yeah. But it just proved positive that evil's too unpredictable.
Right.
And I would have given my left arm to be stopping by that day, dropping off medical kits or testing their duress button or any of the other reasons I stopped by there after their training. I'd give my left arm to be there, because I'm retired, not dead, as I say, right? Like, but the reality and the data supports that I'm not going to be there. Law enforcement's not going to be there. Like, the people there have to know what to do it well, and do it immediately. And they did. They crushed it. And we can get into as little or as much of that as you want to, as far as what happened.
Well, I mean, I like to hear from you, so it happens. Describe to me upon first hearing about it, what were you feeling?
Oh, I don't know if I can go here. It still hurts a lot because Tracy and I, who's my vice president and my number 2, we both formerly worked at the police department, and we both did a walkthrough of that crime scene. So it still just shreds me. You can imagine. But I was in Memphis at another school doing an assessment, security assessment of their 2 campuses, and what we found out. And, it was just pure shock, and then we actually knew the number and sex and rough age of the victims probably prior to the police department because of people that we're in contact with that we called that were on scene at the hospital. So, I couldn't get back to town fast enough, but I had a job to finish. There's another school counting on us to tell them what to do to make their campus safer. But anyway, it just numb for, just days. And then I told you that William Kinney's family are friends of mine, and the first thing I had to do when I got in town was go find them, go see them, and that's terrible, as you can imagine. But prior to being able to get in touch with them, we did the walkthrough of the crime scene, and that's, here's the thing. Well, yeah, Jim, here's the thing. I've seen all that before, right? I was a cop for almost 20 years, but it's different,
Well, when you have a personal connection to it, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. When it belongs to people you knew, and you can just imagine what all was there.
As a cop, I can't imagine, what does it mean to be desensitized to that after a while? You see so much of it.
Yeah.
These people that have to go in and analyze crime scenes and forensics and things of that nature, blood spatter patterns, it takes a special human being.
It takes a toll.
I would imagine.
It's, you can't, we talk about mental trauma in our training because that's a really important piece of all of this too, that people can't overlook. Like, we can't just focus on surviving the event. We got to look beyond that. And I tell people when we talk about mental trauma, here's the thing about being a human. I don't care how tough you are, how Billy Bad-A you think you are, or whatever. You can never unsee or unexperience what you have seen and experienced.
Yeah. It's like a Pandora's box.
Can't do it.
Yeah.
Can you get help to deal with it? Can you work through it? 100%. But I tell people, don't forget that piece of this. There were 5 Metro officers involved in carrying those kids to ambulances. They're not doing well. One of them never went back.
Oh, wow.
Literally, that night. Because mental trauma is real.
Yeah.
And so the way I kind of close that section of training is I say this: just because you survived the event does not mean you survive the event.
Right.
Because of the mental trauma piece. So, don't forget that. It has to be dealt with immediately. And Covenant has done a really good job with that. They got on it right away. But you have to understand, too, that's a church and a school. And both church and school experienced that. Yeah. Right? So I would say to churches out there that may listen or that may have a school as part of it, understand if you experience something like that in this building, you're both experiencing that. So you're going to have to look outside for that help, not to the church or whatever. But yeah, it's still just getting that word back to the 27th. I mean, we were trying to do everything we could to get information, as you can imagine. But, Tracy's husband is like the 9th guy in the building, so he can't talk, but we're trying to just find out anything we can. And then as everything started to unfold that week, I've never been more proud of a group of people in my life.
I bet. Yeah. But I really, that moment, I felt for you, because I cannot imagine being in that position that, man, we just trained these people and, what would have happened if we hadn't, because I've sat through your training and there's stuff I still take with me. Like I still need to get tourniquet kits and bleeding control kits just to have on hand in cars and stuff like that. But the biggest thing that, just to how to handle a long gun attacker and a short gun attacker, that kind of thing. It's still, I sat as kind of like a passive bystander on the training, helping you film it and stuff like that, because it's part of what I did.
Yeah.
But it made an impact on me. I'm like, oh my gosh, I took a lot away from it, That was practical advice, practical defense tactics that can come in very handy someday.
Yeah, it's got to be easy to retain, right? Yeah. When I developed the curriculum, I couldn't make it complicated, a bunch of ninja stuff. People aren't going to be practicing every week. It had to be easy to remember, but also have to get you emotionally invested in the beginning, not traumatized, emotionally invested.
Yeah.
So that your brain does open up and want to retain the knowledge. And that's just kind of, I guess, why our approach is a little different. We don't just come in and start with, here's what you do if you find yourself in an active violence event. It's not how it starts. Right. We have to crawl, walk, run you. But, my dad and I were talking when I started this company and about the most important thing I was getting ready to do. And what I settled on was, it's the experience of the person sitting in the chair listening, right? What I call the student experience. Because that dictates what you retain, what you leave there with, and what you can recall under stress a year from now.
Yeah.
So everything about what we do is about that experience. I mean, we are super, super particular about the audiovisual setup where we go for all those reasons, because it's all about the student experience or the audience experience. I don't know how many teachers from Covenant, I can't even remember, have said the words, I can't believe I was able to blah, blah, blah. And that's just, I'm not going to say it's a testament to our training. That's just a testament to training in general, right? Sure. Planting seeds in your primitive brain and having your primitive brain be able to respond under stressful moments. Every law enforcement military guy that may hear this understands what I mean. Just training is key to being able to perform. And they did. When I finally got to meet with the faculty, probably one of the hardest nights of my life. It was a week to the day. The board of the school asked me to come meet with the board. And then they asked me to meet with the faculty and unpack the whole thing. And then they asked me to stay and meet with the entire parent community and answer questions, which you can imagine that was not a fun day. But I told the teachers, I've never been more proud of a group in my life. But the last week has been terrible because I told them, I said, I feel like a Super Bowl winning coach who has been separated from his team since they won the game. Right. And, again, we can get into kind of what I mean by that and kind of the details of how things went down there. But they did an amazing job. But I want to make sure that people understand that like, they're the reason. Like, their ability to perform is the reason.
What were some of the tactics they were using? I'd imagine you walk through the entire step-by-step recounting of the process of everything. I mean, what were some of the things that they put into play that, jumping into action from, I guess ascertaining whether or not it is gunfire, which is a part of your training, which I found to be very astounding. At the one that I started, I came with you. You actually do discharge a firearm inside the facility into a bullet trap, a portable bullet trap, so they get an idea of what a firearm will sound like inside their facility going off.
Yeah, and we did that at Covenant as well. We did it a couple of times, and strangely enough, the first time I did it at Covenant, or the first volley of shots, if you will, the art teacher, based on where her classroom was, didn't hear a single thing.
Wow.
And we, as you just mentioned, we also discharged an AR-15 and a handgun, both, and live ammunition, like you mentioned, because blanks just don't sound the same. And then we did it again, and she did hear it from where we were. Well, strangely enough, that art teacher is one of the only 2 adults that heard the initial shots inside the building. Yeah.
Wow.
So just kind of walking through, instead of getting into it all too often into the tactics, just because it's a general consumption podcast. But so she walks up, shoots her way into the doors. Everybody's seen that footage. That's 10, 11 a.m. When she crawls through the glass, there's a glass wall on your right, if you will, that was at the time was the youth center. That's where Mike Hill was located, the facilities guy. So as soon as she crawled through the doors, she saw him in there. Mike tried to make a run for it, and she shot him through that glass wall, and he went down. When she did that, she happened to be standing directly under a smoke detector. So the smoke generated by her rifle set off the fire alarm for the whole building. Believe it or not, even though she had discharged an AR-15 inside the building, only 2 adults heard it. One was the PE teacher who was in a gym that was close by. He had a class full of 4-year-olds and was able to get them out. And the other one was the art teacher I was just talking about. The classrooms are all the ones that are in play on this particular event. On that end of the building are all upstairs from this, though. They're not on the same floor. So besides the art teacher, who was basically not directly above, but almost above the initial shots, like she heard it, felt it through the floor, all that kind of stuff. The other classrooms up there heard nothing but an unscheduled fire alarm.
Wow. Huh.
What do you do, right?
Yeah.
So they started to evacuate, and the first 3rd grade class, it was at the two 3rd grade classrooms and the 2 2nd grade classrooms were at the time kind of near each other. And so the first set of 3rd graders started to come out and started to head down a stairwell to leave for safety. And that happens to be the stairwell she was coming up. So my friend's son, Will, was the first one in the stairwell. And then Hallie and Evelyn were right behind him. And, they didn't have a chance, man. Like, even as an adult, like, are you going to, like, if you're leaving on a fire drill and you open a door to a stairwell and there's somebody in front of you in camouflage with a bunch of guns, is your brain even going to process what you're saying? No.
I can't, it's like, do you even have time to process fight or flight? No. That's from a kid's point of view, absolutely not.
You're not even going to be able to process what you're seeing.
Right.
And you got, I don't want to get into too much detail, but you got a bad guy 7 feet from you with a rifle in a stairwell. You have no chance. The substitute teacher that was killed, Miss Peak, she was right there with those kids. She was not part of their class. Yeah. She was coming from a different adjacent hallway going to teach history, and I think just ended up at that intersection at that time. So the 4 of them were killed within 3 feet of each other. But all the other kids in the hallway ran back to their classroom for safety, where their teacher still was, right? Because no teachers from the evacuating classes are in the hallway yet, because teachers' role in a fire evacuation is they're the caboose. So they can't leave, right, till they know every kid's out. But they ran back to their room, and their teacher crushed it, got her door locked, got her window covered, and got her kids where they were positioned. And thankfully she did, because the shooter got to her door and dumped an entire 30-round magazine from an AR into her classroom through her door, and then reloaded and did the exact same thing to the door next to it, and didn't get anybody.
Nice,
because the teachers.
Yeah, they remembered your training. Yeah,
they crushed it. And then from there, she makes a big loop basically, and Katherine, my friend that was the head of school, just ends up face to face with the gunman in a different hallway. After reviewing the evidence now, it appears that Katherine was just trying to figure out what was going on with the fire alarm. She did not hear a single gunshot. Ended up face to face with the shooter in the hall, and she was shot and killed there. And but mind you, now we're still under 3 minutes.
Yeah,
like all this happens: 2 floors, 3 magazine changes, 6 people killed under 3 minutes.
Yeah.
That's when they figured out what was happening and got word to everybody, and the people that were safe to get out and do what we call evade did so. The ones that weren't did the other one we talk about, which is fortify, and that was it. She was out of options at that point, and she wandered around looking and shooting into hallways and shooting into doors and all sorts of stuff, and eventually posted up and ended up picking an ambush spot. And she started to ambush Metro PD when they pulled on the property. She was at an elevated position where she could shoot them, and she started doing that. She hit a bunch of their cars, didn't hit any of them, thankfully.
Right.
And then the guys got there and went in and handled business. But like I mentioned, when you see Rex stick the key in the door, that's 12 minutes into the attack.
Yeah.
Then it's another 2 minutes and 15 seconds before they get to her.
Because they had no idea. I mean, they just knew she was from an elevated position. Did they know where she was upon entering the school?
They did not. No. Yeah. So if you've seen the body cam footage or anybody watches it, like they hit the door and they start hitting those rooms because they don't have any stimulus, what we call stimulus, which is gunshots. They don't have anything to follow, nothing to go on. They have no idea where the shooter is. So they clear those first 2 rooms, kind of clear it turns out it's the school lobby that you see where there's a kind of big circular desk. And then on Rex's body cam, especially, you see it. He realizes all of a sudden, you can hear it on his body cam, the really muffled thud. Mm-hmm. And that's when he realized it's upstairs. Yeah. And that's when he pushes the fight upstairs, and went right to it and handled it.
Well, lately we found some of the writings that were released. Apparently she went in, it was a suicide run. She knew what the end game would be.
Yeah. She called it her death day.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, her plan was to die. She had other plans too that she wasn't able to carry out.
Yeah.
So yeah, she had routes planned out and everything.
So she's done reconnaissance on that place, everything.
Yes.
Wow.
She had a map of the school that she had drawn, and had Route 1 and Route 2 and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And had other things she wanted to do, but.
And she was an employee there, or a student, I think, at one point?
She was a student. She had gone there until the 3rd grade.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. A long time ago, though. I mean, a really long time ago. But
she held on to a grudge of some sort.
Yeah. She had been fantasizing about shooting up a school for over a decade.
Yeah.
Not just that school, any school. So she was just a sick human, right? Yeah. Evil. And that wasn't even her first target anyway. Her first target was much larger, and she just felt like she couldn't control the environment at that other target as much as she could this one.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of talk about the writings, and that it's not a manifesto, by the way. That word probably shouldn't have been used. And some of them have been released now. And as you're seeing, I mean, it's the rantings of a lunatic. I mean, there's a sick human that wants to kill people, and when the whole argument was going on over whether or not to release them, I was against releasing them because I know what's in some of them, the reconnaissance stuff. But the other question I'll pose to anybody and everybody is tell me what could be in there that's going to help stop the next one.
Right. Because that was a big part of it was, okay, this released the manifesto. Let's see what she was thinking. And it was controversial. A lot of people thought it, quote, didn't fit the narrative because she was, I guess, transgender. And this event was carried out by somebody like that. So I'm of the point in my I guess in history and in my life that I don't know what I guess I can be settled with my own truth. That's all we can do, I figured that, well, if they're not releasing it, there's got to be a reason. I don't think it's really a media-driven, agenda-driven thing that people looked into. But I could see where you're coming from, that, what use is there to release a manifesto of like that,
Yeah, if anything else is just going to potentially trigger some other psycho. And
it's like a how-to in a way.
And here's the thing, like, I say this all the time, and I'm eventually going to write an article about it, but stop focusing on the why.
Yeah.
Because the why for every shooter is different. Even if we figure out the why, it's not going to stop the next one, because the next shooter's why is different. People ask me all the time to this day, did we ever figure out the Vegas shooter's motive? Did we ever figure out why he did that? My question to them is, what difference does it make? Yeah. It is not going to stop the next one. So we just got to focus where our time, effort, and energy, where we can make a difference, which is what we do as a company. Uncle Phil, God rest his soul, used to always say, emotion will bring you to the problem, but only logic can solve it.
Yeah.
And a lot of the argument around the release of the writings and stuff was more emotional, not logical. Like when you sit back and think about it, give me an example of something that could be in there that would help you stop the next one.
Other than the fact that, identifying the nuances of somebody who has mental health issues, what kind of signs can someone draw from an individual, people who are close to them, friends, family, things of that nature. Those types of clues, you got to be able to be on the lookout for. I mean, I guess now we have to be on the lookout for them on a more vigilant basis, I mean, was there any indices in those writings of her mental condition, outward expression of those feelings or thoughts or anything like that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm saying if somebody in society has a family member, relative, friend, and they happen to see writings like that have been released, you may want to pick up the phone and call somebody. Like,
oh, yeah.
Her family knew she had severe psychological issues. She's been in psychological treatment for like 20 years.
Yeah.
And more than one time, I probably can't go there, but just know that everybody in her life that knew her and knew her well knew she was a ticking time bomb.
Right.
So, there was a time in this country's history where we used to take people like that and lock them away.
Yeah.
Right. And now everybody wants to have the debate over, well, how do we keep evil, crazy people away from guns? And it's such a slippery slope because of the Second Amendment. People have not been able to figure out how we do that. Well, we used to remove the person, not the gun. We'd remove the person from society. And my personal opinion is we need to go back to that. Mm-hmm. And now, granted, it wasn't done correctly back when it was done. It was not, but there's no other solution, because once you're an adult, nobody can make you take your medication. Nobody can make you do all these things. And if you're a ticking time bomb, then we need to just remove you from society where you're a threat to anybody.
Does your garage door sound like this? If it does, it's screaming for help. Call Incredible Doors, 931-348-DOOR. We're making garage doors in Murray and Williamson counties work better, sound better, and, well, spring better. We just make them incredible again. Incredible Doors in Spring Hill. For when your door's springs break, you need remote reconnections, opener installation, or just about anything to do with your garage door. Go to IncredibleDoors.com or call 931-348-DOOR. Follow us on Facebook for specials on maintenance visits, keypads, and other items. 931-348-DOOR.
I would imagine that even there's like a Minority Report-esque notion to that as well, where you're starting to become thought police. We've seen recently where the UK, England, is starting to go after people for things that they're expressing online.
Yep.
What they deem to be, quote, hate speech. And they wanted the U.S. to kind of fall in line with, hey, we're going to police your citizens from over the pond based on what they post on Twitter or, social media, and, hold them accountable for it. And it's like, well, what are you talking about here? It's taking it to one hell of an extreme. So, I mean, I'll ask you this. I mean, from your company's point of view, I know that you unpack these scenarios, 7 ways till Sunday. All the things that most people aren't even thinking of because you're such an expert and a professional in your field. You've unpacked the Vegas shooting. You've unpacked all the most recent ones. Of course, this one, because you're so close to it, it's a new experience for you because of your proximity to the event. What changes do you think can be put out there moving forward?
Well, I want to go back to the thought police stuff for a minute. So hear me when I say I'm a big First Amendment guy too. I think the right to free speech is critical. But I don't think you can repeatedly threaten harm to others and should be able to maintain your freedom. I mean, I think that it's, we
got to take it seriously now.
We in Tennessee, if I am within a physical confrontation distance and I verbally threaten to beat your butt, that's assault. Just the threat part is assault. So I understand that's a slippery slope too. There would need to be significant guardrails in place to stop like crazy ex-girlfriend from having me committed, right? Yeah. But it's doable. Like we're pretty smart society. Like we could figure this out.
I don't know. Are we? Have you seen Facebook lately?
I try not to. But as far as active violence situations go, the data continues to support that the people in the event being armed with knowledge is where the difference is made.
Right.
We've spent billions of dollars on police training and equipment to this problem. And I'm not saying we shouldn't have, because we need to have the cops very well trained to face evil. But in the process, we've missed the most important piece, which is the middle, the people in the event. We're better at prevention, seeing more and more headlines of these things being stopped before they happen. We're better at police response. That's great. What we've missed is the middle. And that's where the difference is made, because the speed with which these things happen, I mean, like I just went over Sandy Hook, but that's 6 minutes.
Yeah.
Parkland, Florida, where he shot 34, killed 17 people. That event, that's the dots on the map. If you remember that part, the moving dots on the map on the diagram.
Yeah.
That event, the amount of time that he actually shot people, 3 minutes and 57 seconds. Wow. All that damage was done.
Wow.
Peterson, the SRO, was on campus, didn't go in and do his job. But when Peterson arrives at the corner of the building, a 1 minute and 50 seconds had elapsed by the time he got there. From the time the attack started to the time Peterson arrived was 1 minute and 50 seconds. He had shot 24 already, 11 of which ended up dying. So the people in the event have to know what to do. I mean, that's why, Jim, like we train, like I just told you before we went on, a couple of weeks ago, we trained an orthodontics office. We've trained the Nashville Symphony. We train country music tours. We train over 200 schools across the country. Our heart is certainly in schools. I mean, we'll train anybody because we're tired of people dying.
Yeah.
We're really tired of kids dying.
And, that's the thing is that a lot of people, they want to politicize it and further divide us because the point of contention here is the Second Amendment. Our right to bear arms shall not be infringed, as the Constitution says. But there is a population, a sector of the population that believes, well, hey, we need stronger legislation. It's like, well, look at all the places that have the stronger legislation. They're not any better off, and that's just data. That's hard facts. When you go into things like this, and you have, it's. We need to stop with the thoughts and prayers. We need, action from Congress and things of that nature. I mean, what are your thoughts on that when it comes to, I agree with you that the training in terms of whether you choose to be armed in a school or preventative measures, okay, how do I logically walk through this stuff I've never thought of before, having the blind corners, things of that nature. That does go a long way because it buys you the time you need before the cavalry arrives. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So there is more we can do legislatively. As far as the Second Amendment goes, there are more guns in circulation in this country than there are people. So we're too late. So I mean, I'm not even going to go there. It's just undoable at this point. But legislatively speaking, there's a lot more we could do, not from that standpoint, but from, as far as putting safeguards in place in schools. We've done a lot kind of physical security wise in the last couple of years in the General Assembly, as far as certain requirements about locking doors and things like that. But, if the number one recommendation in the Sandy Hook after action report was making sure you have classroom doors that you can lock from the inside, why does every classroom in America not have classroom doors that lock from the inside?
Still.
Really? I'd say well over half of our school clients still don't have classroom doors that lock from the inside of the room. That was literally the number one recommendation in the Sandy Hook after action report. That, by the way, we're coming up on the 12-year anniversary of that event.
Yeah.
So, and I'm here to tell you that made a life-saving difference at Covenant, because that first third grade classroom I told you about, as those kids are running back in, she was able to grab that door, pull it closed, and hit a button, and that door was locked. And literally seconds later, that shooter was at her door. So, there's some law in Tennessee that governs about being able to carry guns, like for carry permit holders to be able to carry guns on school campuses, which I get. But a lot of those schools lease their space to a church or to a church plant on Sundays.
Yeah.
Well, now we're functioning as a church, not a school. So why should we not be able to have carry permit holders carrying there, right? So there's just some things we can do legislatively that make sense. A few things have been done in the last couple of years, but I did have a meeting, it doesn't matter who, but a week before last now with, I'll just say leadership in the Tennessee General Assembly. I've been asked to speak to their group, and then we're having some really serious discussions about a legislative package this year that could really move the needle in Tennessee. And I told them, and I tell everybody I speak in front of, we've got an opportunity as a state to be thought leaders in this space. Let's do that and let everybody else follow us.
Yeah. Because, a lot of your thoughts right now indicate to me that, look, we're in agreement. Yeah, we've got an issue here. We're trying to solve the problem. But what you're proposing isn't going to solve the problem. It's the operator of the instrument of death that is the problem. Right. And how do we navigate this without trampling certain aspects of the Constitution? It really is a very tricky. And I believe a lot of what you do is the answer. You're probably not going to be able to stop the next attack preemptively, unless we really read the writing on the wall. You see, if we can quantify what those nuances are, those characteristics are of a person like that, and if you see something, say something, kind of an approach.
If people would do that, but then again, like how many warning signs do we have to have? Like the Covenant shooter, we had all the warning signs in the world. The shooter at Parkland, Florida, everybody said, if anybody's going to shoot up the school, it's this guy. But then you have the ones like Vegas that come out of nowhere. Yeah. So there is no way to figure out like what are the nuances, because they're all different. Yeah. So these things are not going away, right? End of story. They're not going away. If anything, they're getting worse and more frequent. But where we can, and we're never going to stop them all, right? Yeah. Never. But if we can mitigate 90% of the damage by properly training the people that find themselves in the event, why have we not done that?
Because a lot of what you're doing with the bleeding control training as well, that's a big part of it. Because a lot of people, if they can prevent from being bled out and dying after the actual event has happened and the smoke clears, you've got that second notion, that second phase of the trauma that's happening. It's making sure that people know how to keep others alive or themselves, how to actually, effectively apply a tourniquet, which in your training, I did wear that, and it's not fun.
No, they're not.
No. I wrapped it around my thigh, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!"
Yeah, it's I ask when I review on the medical, and I'm finishing up, and I kind of ask questions of the audience, right, to check on learning, if you will. And I ask them, "Is your patient going to complain about the tourniquet?" And everybody's answer is yes. But then I ask them, "Is tourniquet pain their problem or your problem?" Yeah. Well, it's their problem. Yeah. But I will say two things on this. One, yes, it's not just bleeding control. It's just pre-hospital trauma because of the tension pneumothorax and some other things we teach on. The two most preventable causes of battlefield death is what we teach you how to prevent, right? Pre-hospital care, if you will. And it's just part of our program. It's 25% of our program because it's so important. And you're more likely going to use that at a car crash, right? The first time I had to use it was about 10 months ago now.
Really?
In Franklin on Highway 96, really bad crash. I had two people I had to treat. One was a massive hemorrhage. One was an airway problem. And I teach this stuff every day for active shooter events, but it's applicable everywhere.
Yeah.
The other thing that's also the reason we had an 86% survival rate at the Vegas shooting.
Right.
Was pre-hospital and bleeding control. And I've got the video evidence to support it because I have all the footage from that event.
Just people in the crowd that knew how to do it.
Law enforcement had the training and equipment. A bunch of people in the audience were currently or formerly in the military. So they've been through something called combat lifesaver or tactical combat casualty care. And then a bunch of members of that audience were outdoorsmen and hunters who put themselves through a course called wilderness first aid. Mm-hmm. So collectively, it was law enforcement in the audience that knew how to treat the two most preventable causes of battlefield death, extremity hemorrhage and tension pneumothorax. And they did it. Mm-hmm. And they got people to the hospital. And that's why we had an 86% survival rate. Dude, there were 413 people shot at that event.
Wow.
Not injured, shot.
Yeah.
Yes. With a rifle.
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing, circling back to Covenant, there's 8 million reasons I'm proud of them. But on our walk through that crime scene, I can't even remember how many classrooms we went in. They had gotten their trauma kits out. After going through all that, they still had the wherewithal to say, there's maybe something I can do here. And they got their kits out and had them staged ready to treat people. That's remarkable.
Because at that point, they're taking advantage, like you said, with the wherewithal that they had left. It's, the shock of the moment has not yet hit, so you could still think lucidly and clearly about what you need to do, which tells a lot about a person. Like you said, nobody really knows how they'll react until they're in that kind of a situation. I have you'd like to think, even some of these TikToks and videos you come across of people trying to rob convenience stores, and there's a customer in line and the guy makes a complete mistake by pointing the gun somewhere elsewhere. And then the guy just comes around and all of a sudden he's got him in a headlock. That one move you taught me about getting your arm around their neck and just falling backward and locking them up and making them pass out, that kind of thing.
Rear naked choke. Yeah. It's very effective. We teach that to everybody, though.
I know. I remember that. And I'm like, well, I'll just do that, Understanding that, you said that, look, when you do that, understand you will probably get hurt.
Yeah.
You're going to be falling backwards. You're going to injure yourself. But, if you can get their airway and make them compliant, it neutralizes the threat until the police get there.
Well, one clarification. It's not their airway. It's their carotid arteries that we're squishing closed. So it makes them go unconscious. But we also talk about accepting injury over death. It's a big part of what you're going to get hurt. You're going to get injured. There's no question you're going to get injured.
But nobody thinks that. If anybody doesn't have the training, they're not going to think that way.
Right.
That was one of the big takeaways I had was what, if that does happen, and chances are as we kind of progress through our society, how it is, there are increased chances of this happening. And then understanding the notion that, hey, if it does, there's a good chance I might have to get hurt.
Yeah.
You just got to be okay with it.
Just accept it. Own it during the training.
Yeah.
You said a minute ago, you'd like to think you know how you're going to react, but you don't really know. Well,
right.
We talk very specifically in training about reacting versus responding, and training gives you the ability to respond, not react. So the people often mistakenly refer to these things as split-second decisions, but I disagree with that. And here's kind of the analogy I use in training. If you're driving down the road here today, leaving, and you're doing 40 miles an hour, and a deer runs out in the road in front of you, and you slam on your brakes to avoid hitting that deer, do you believe that was a split-second decision? Do you truly believe you decided to hit your brakes?
I think it's like an intrinsic, just your body reacting, like a second nature thing.
It's your body responding.
Right.
That's a response, right? A response is what you did. And a response is based on 3 things.
Right.
Training, experience, and external stimulus in your environment, right? And that's the difference there. So you had all those things, and that's what gave you the ability to respond. In the deer scenario, you may have a reaction also, and that'd be the whatever 4-letter word you choose to use in that moment, right?
Right.
That's the reaction, but the response is what you did based on those 3 things.
Right.
What does that come from? Training, experience, and external stimulus.
Oh no? Is that the 4-letter word you're thinking of? Okay.
Or deer.
Right.
Somebody said that the other day. Yeah.
Darn.
Yeah. All those. Yeah. Shucks. All that's 5. Yeah.
That would be 5. Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be 6 actually.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah. I'm not a grammar teacher, obviously, but so anyway, that's again, we focus on training because it gives you the ability to respond in the moment, and that's what we need as more responders. Period.
And reacting is more just a mental. It's a physical manifestation of a response.
Yeah. So I equate it like this when I'm teaching. So we're like, if let's say we were doing a class right here, right now, and I had 10 people in the room, and I'd say, okay, if there were gunshots in this building right this second, everybody in here would have some sort of reaction.
Yeah.
Depending on how many people are there from my team, let's say it's just me, at least one of us is going to respond. A response is pre-programmed, and it's based on training experience and external stimulus, right? Mm-hmm. So if you have those things, then you're going to have the ability to respond. But if you don't, you're going to react, which is jump, shock, freeze, fight, flight, freeze, all those things. Yeah. But you're not responding in that moment. You're reacting.
You're panicking.
That's right. And responding is what we're after.
Right. That's incredible, man. I think, we'll get into the business aspect of it, but I mean, your business since the Covenant event, from where I'm seeing it, it blew up. It just exploded. Yeah. A lot of people, there was a demand created. Unfortunate as it is, what has that been like? Because you were aptly credited for the training that was done at the school. Like I said, and I'll take it to my grave. Without that training, I think that the scenario would have been far worse than what it was. And I love and I appreciate the fact that you credit the staff and the teachers. I mean, but you got to understand you were the conduit of that information. Had they not had you, I love your humility in this, but I need to make sure that everybody listening, everyone watching, that dude, you have a gift. You have a purpose in life that is God-given. I think that is divine. And buddy, that training saved a lot of lives that day.
Well, okay. I do appreciate your words. And
so if you're not going to praise yourself, I'll praise you as well.
Here's how.
Because I know you.
There's two ways I equate this. Number one, if a soldier does something really heroic in a combat theater, the soldier gets the medal. We don't go to the guy that trained him in boot camp,
right,
and say, "Good job, buddy." Also, does anyone talk about Trisha Yearwood's vocal coach when she was 12 years old, even if she had one? Who knows? Right. No. What do they talk about? Trisha Yearwood's performance.
Right.
So that's why I have such a hard time with it. I do appreciate your words, and the feedback from that community, the people that live through the event, has been phenomenal. It's a unique bond, Jim. I don't know. Maybe there is, but I don't know of another trainer that has trained people in person for active violence mitigation and bleeding control and all that. We train people to face their worst day.
Yeah.
And now we've had a group face their worst day, right? And so it's such a unique bond I have with that community. I'd hang out I would hang out at that school every day if they'd let me, and they probably would. But it's just good for my soul to be around them.
Yeah.
But yes, business exploded overnight. We were getting calls from all over the country. And I don't know if you know this, there was a local reporter that set in on the training at Covenant. Mm-hmm. It's a friend that interviews me a lot for stuff, police-related stuff. And I kept asking her, I'm like, hey, I'd really want you to come see what I actually do most of the time. So she happened to be at the training with Covenant. So the day of the shooting, she went to the scene and responded live from the scene talking about the training day because she was there when we did the training.
Yeah.
And that's how, overnight it exploded. And anybody else that's had a business that's grown really quickly understands what the last years looked like for me. It's been a headache and tiresome and falling asleep at my desk most nights. But I told people all the time, what we do is important. It's never been more important than it is in a post-Covenant world. Yeah. So I'll fall asleep at the desk every night if I have to, whatever it takes to get the message out and to get more people empowered to help themselves.
Dare I ask, is it something you enjoy doing? You feel like it's your calling?
Definitely.
It's not a job. It's not something. It does not work. This is you, man. This is what you were born to do.
I love what I do, and I think that's what keeps me going because it's difficult. I told the team and I had a pretty deep discussion the other day because we're all under a lot of stress, and I said, "Listen, you guys, we did not pick an easy job." Like the amount of darkness we have to expose ourselves to consistently from all these videos, from all these reports. We just, as a team, flew to Parkland, Florida about 3 months ago now and met with their lead homicide investigator from that shooting and met with him for an entire day and unpacked that entire case and knowing everything about every victim. That's hard, man. That's hard to hear about freshmen and how they were executed and all these things. But it's so rewarding to you, dude. You literally watch people transform right in front of you. You see it. Like, you see people that are scared, timid, don't want to be there, think you're going to traumatize them, turn into, I can do this.
Yeah.
You see it happen right in front of you. It's
empowerment. Yeah.
Number one word we hear when we say, we do testimonial interviews and say, how would you describe the training in one word if you could only use one word? And empowering is the number one word. Matter of fact, that's our company mission statement, tagline, if you will, is that we empower you to save lives, including your own.
Yeah.
That's it. That's what we do.
So, I mean, if there's I guess the only way to kind of mitigate these things from happening over time as we move forward as a culture and a society, I'm a big proponent of talking about signaling. We all signal verbally and non-verbally. If all of a sudden you have certain states, Tennessee being one of them, that if a teacher wants to train on a regular basis, they can carry a firearm. It's going to make the perp think twice. Even though, hey, I'm going in, this is a suicide mission, I may not be able to accomplish anything I set out to do. Can that turn this ship around?
So that's an interesting question. People think that SROs prevent school shootings, and the data does not support that. We continue to see school after school after school that has an SRO. They come shoot it up anyway. When we see that, though, it's typically a teenager, right? And if you think about when you were that age, there's no logic in your brain. It's all emotion, right? Yeah. So they don't care. They don't care what cops are or not. They're going to go shoot up the school anyway, right? Parkland, Florida had an SRO. Columbine had an SRO. Great Mills High School had an SRO. Santa Fe High School had an SRO. I mean, and the shooters knew that. They go to school there. So now, for adult shooters, we do see them process a little bit more about consequences, not necessarily consequences, but how much damage am I going to get done before somebody takes me out?
Yeah.
Like the Pulse nightclub shooter, for example. Pulse nightclub was not his first target. His first target was Disney World, and he went there and saw a bunch of law enforcement and changed his target, right? Much like Covenant shooter, it wasn't the day of. But anyway, so good guys with guns being in places can, I won't say does, can prevent some shootings depending on the shooter. Mm-hmm. Mitigating the damage, having somebody shooting back very quickly, 100%. Yeah. And people don't love to hear that, but think about a cafeteria, think about a gymnasium. You can't evacuate that.
Yeah.
It's impossible. You have a gunman get in there, you have to have somebody ready to meet force with force. Mm-hmm. Like, end of story.
Yeah.
That's just a logic thing.
So will you have like a movie that comes out, excuse me, I'm like producing in real time while I'm recording and interviewing. You have a movie that came out a couple of years ago. My son wanted to see it, called Run, Hide, Fight. Have you seen that movie at all?
I've heard of it, but haven't seen it.
It was a Daily Wire movie.
Okay.
And it actually goes through a very bold situation in terms of, a school that's being taken hostage, very familiar kind of scenario that we see playing out a lot in different schools these days, but where one of the main characters decides to, no, I'm going to fight back, and it's a very, dare I say, leaning right type of movie, whereas this is the reason why we need, ways to defend ourselves, or at least go on the offensive in situations like this. Is that something that's, do you see the kind of the sensibility in something like that being put out at all?
Yeah, I do. Our curriculum is an acronym for DEFEND, which is deter, evade, fortify, evaluate, notify, defend. But, when I started doing this, I specifically did not choose Run, Hide, Fight or some of the other ones that are out there just because I felt like they didn't go far enough. Same principles, but a lot more detail. Like ours first choice is evade, which is the run piece, but evade was running with a very specific purpose. Is first option for an unarmed person in a school to engage the gunman in a fight? No. For your first choice is to get out, end of story. Second, if you can't, is to fortify, right? Lock down, do whatever you can to defend your space. But as a last resort, the D at the end is defend. Mm-hmm. Meaning if the shooter breaches the room you're in, you have to fight. The alternative is death. Mm-hmm. Very sadly, one of the teachers killed in Sandy Hook, in her classroom, they had a bathroom. She shoved all of her kids in the bathroom and laid on top of them.
Yeah.
What do you think he did? stood over them. Like you have to fight. So we have to give everyday people, teachers, 22-year-old preschool teachers, we have to give them tools to take on a gunman coming in their room.
Yeah.
And we do. And you can't overcomplicate it because they're never going to remember this stuff.
Right.
So yeah, people fighting back, 100%. We have to have that, but it's got to be delivered a certain way.
Well, here's a question that's popped into my head. You said a lot of people, it's tough for them to remember unless they engage in constant, continuous training. Have you heard of any of your previous clients, not just from a corporate standpoint, but just employees or staff or anybody like that, getting inspired to say, you know what, I like this training. I'm going to continue to work on myself with it. Does that happen?
Yes. And we have a lot of people that end up wanting to come through our 2-day medical course after they get a taste of the medical that we do. We have a lot, actually, believe it or not. We've had a couple of schools that have had us come put on the 2-day medical course at their school. And it's not, I mean, it's intense, man. Like we make it as real as we can make it. So it's not for everybody. Like, but people that just want to take it to the next level. A lot of our clients bring us in, some schools bring us in every single year.
Yeah.
A lot do every other year in person. And in the off years, we have an online platform that we allow current customers to use for this refresher training. We don't offer it as a standalone product just because it's not as effective. But and we have a lot that do that want the continuing education. The ones that bring us in every year, I mean, sometimes we'll mix it up and sometimes they're like, you know what, I get something out of this every time I hear it. And I've heard it 6 times now. So, you know, but for me, it feels really repetitive, you know, it's the same. Like there's one tour, big country tour we train, and they bring us in every single year before they go out on tour.
Wow.
Now they've upped their game a little bit, like on the intensity of training. So they'll have us do more stuff and put them under a little bit more pressure than we would have the first year we did it. Now they've gotten to know us and they trust us and all those kind of things. But so yeah, I mean, but usually what you find is once people have this knowledge, they want to retain it. And if that means they need to take some time on their own to help with that, they'll do it.
Well, it inspires and ignites a flame in them. You know, it's a spark.
That they can help themselves, right? I mean, that's like they are the help.
Yeah.
I mean,
like I've always been really enamored by not jujitsu, but Krav Maga.
Yeah.
Because it's probably a good way for me to get exercise and enjoy it. And it's also practical information that if you ever find yourself in a scenario like that, you just know how to at least attempt to dissuade the perpetrator as quickly as possible. I don't want to get into an MMA fight brawl with them.
Sure.
But, you know, okay, just enough to show you don't mess with me.
Yeah.
You know,
or just that I know you're a fighter.
Yeah.
Now, I think a lot of, like my brother-in-law used to instruct Krav Maga, and it's a great martial art. I am a jiu-jitsu guy, period. As far
jiu-jitsu to me is like more just rolling, you're like grappling and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, but if you may have the best striker in the world, but if he doesn't have takedown defense and a jiu-jitsu guy gets you wrapped up, you're toast, you know? So, anyway, but if the
combination of both then.
Yeah, 100%. Well, that's why MMA was created, right? I mean, 100%.
Okay.
So it's called mixed martial arts, you know? I'm a huge fan of jiu-jitsu. I mean, and the rear naked choke that we teach, that's a very small part of jiu-jitsu, but that's a lot, you know? But yeah, just having the ability to defend yourself or just some sort of tool in your toolbox that makes you a more difficult target, whether they know it or not before everything starts, you know? I mean, criminals are lazy, end of story. And so if you can make something difficult for them, they're probably going to move on.
Yeah. Yeah. They're like salespeople. They're just looking for the path of least resistance.
Well, true. I mean, you think like if they're walking down the street and they see, and they're looking for a house to burglarize and they see, you know, beware of dog sign and a Doberman in the window of this house, or
the lights are on and
no alarm at the next house and no dog, which I mean, it's not rocket science, right?
Yeah.
I mean, criminals aren't stupid.
Yeah.
They make bad life decisions, but most of them are not stupid. They're pretty clever people. So, you know, just if you can make things more difficult, they're going to be less interested in pursuing whatever they're after.
Now, getting back to the business aspect of it, you had talked about, you know, everything exploded overnight as soon as the word got out. You're dealing with this in general and reeling from what had happened. And on top of this, you got to figure out, okay, how do I scale my business? I mean, that's kind of partly why I left you alone. You didn't hear much from me over that. I'm like, I know he is just covered up.
Yeah.
You know? Every now and then I'd text you and say, hey, man, how you? Hope you're okay. And like, I'm just busy, man.
Yeah. You obviously know that wasn't personal. I think a lot of you, the scaling is difficult in what I do because it takes a very specific personality type for me to deliver the course, deliver it well, and I got to trust you with my brand, And I'm a big believer. I mean, I don't hide my Christianity at all, and God has just put people in my life at the right time. I mean, there's no other way to explain how all that happened. But there's 4 of us now that are lead instructors, so we can literally do 4 locations at the same time. We probably have 15 to 17 secondary instructors that are just helpers, if you will. And then I started today, of all days, we hired our marketing communications coordinator because that's something we just don't have time. It needs to be dealt with. Yeah, but we don't have time to do. And so it's been a blessing. I will say, I didn't go to school for business. People are expensive. Employees are expensive. They're worth it. Probably worth more than I can pay them, to be honest with you. But they're all fantastic and they all love what they do, and it comes out, and their passion is just as evident when they're instructing as mine is. Yeah. I've got everything from retired law enforcement, first female on our SWAT team in Nashville, to a girl that came to us she was a college athlete, but came to us from the private school world where she was a risk manager, has her degree in Homeland Security and emergency management. I mean, you talk about niche. Yeah. To a Green Beret that just retired out of 5th group out of Clarksville. That's our cadre. It's like, and they're all awesome people and no egos, which is huge for me and us as a company. It's tough to find the like-minded, like-hearted people for any business. That's creating that culture is, if anything, the culture enforcement officer is what CEO really means. Yeah. And that's kind of your job, in addition to all the other hats that you got to wear. Moving forward, I mean, it's any potential for somebody that, hey, I can't get Brink. Is there a way that you're going to start thinking more like a personal branding effort? Because, I mean, I'd love to hear more from you, in other avenues, whether they're video, podcast, what have you, short form content, things of that nature. You certainly have the goods. You certainly have the knowledge. You definitely have a book in you, I was just asked about that. Yeah. Again. I mean, there's a lot, speaking, all that kind of stuff. Is there anything on the horizon that you're looking into? Because you and I talked about this a long time ago, that making you, you're the mouthpiece, the face of defense systems, but you're very hesitant about it. Has that changed over the years? Yes and no. Yes, in that I finally just had to embrace that. I don't know if you remember, but I wasn't even on Facebook when we met, and you're the one that convinced me I had to be on Facebook. Because you are your brand. Yeah. And then fine. And you're right. The speaking engagements are really picking up, and those are huge, by the way. So for your listeners, I'm always looking for potential speaking engagements. It does not matter the organization type or the conference type, because this problem's everywhere. But what I've really started looking at is a longevity plan. I don't want defense systems to go away when I retire. Yeah. It's too important. The mission's too important. Yeah. What we do is too important. So I really started to focus a lot on that too. Like, what does this look like 10 How do you years duplicate from now yourself versus 30 years from now? Right. Mm-hmm. That we've got to figure that out. And so we're focusing on all that. I think there will be more coming in the form of short form content, some things like that. I got asked, I don't know, probably a year ago at this point, maybe longer, by another successful entrepreneur. He said, does your business run without you? Yeah. And I said, no. He said, then you don't have a business, you have a job. Yep. So getting there, not that I want to pull back, but being able to get the business where it will do its own thing, so that I can pull back when I want to, or do more speaking engagements and less trainings or whatever. I don't know. I don't know what the future holds, but just trying to be forward thinking. Now, you're younger than I am, right? I don't know how old you are, but I'm 49. Oh, we're the same age then. Yeah. So, I mean, it's similar situation in our business. Can it run without us, my business partner, and me? No. We're working it takes time. It's a process, not an event. But definitely having your eye on the prize in terms of creating other Brink Fidlers in your organization that carry that, that belief forward.
I don't think it's going to be hard. From my perspective on the outside of your business, I can't imagine it would be all that difficult. It just takes time and persistence.
Finding the right personality type with the right background that's also good at public speaking. I mean, that's a big thing, is you have to be able to engage with people and I think, and I love cops, so don't hear me wrong, but that's when we talk to organizations that have had law enforcement come in and do their training, the consistent messaging we hear, they don't know their audience.
Yeah.
They're talking, you can't, and that's what I took a lot of time to develop when I got started doing this, was learning a new audience. These are not cops and soldiers you're talking to. Yeah. You can't come in and start yelling at them and put them under stress and see how they perform. They're going to shut down.
Yeah.
Like these are everyday people.
They can get up and leave.
These are accountants. These are whatever. Like, you can't do that with, like, is there one in the room that would handle that? Sure. So changing mindset, and that's, understanding your audience is huge. And we take a lot of pride in that. And we do understand our audience, and people tell us that all the time, but we've taken a lot of time to learn them though. Because again, you can't traumatize people. This is a heavy topic. You have to know this is a heavy topic. One of the tours that I mentioned earlier, the first year we trained them, I had to ask them, hey, was anybody at the Vegas shooting at Route 91? Because we're going to talk about it, and I need to know if they were. I need to find these people ahead of time and talk to them one-on-one about what we're going to cover, because it's different for everybody. There were two guys there. One of them was there. He was front of house. He opted out of the training. Now, he's been through a lot of trauma in his life. Another guy was a video guy who was down in the pit and said, I know this is going to be hard, but I watched people bleed to death, and I had no idea what to do. I can't wait to have this training.
Wow.
But again, knowing your audience, I went and sought them out before the training, so to make sure we're not traumatizing somebody,
right?
And so I think that's just one of the things that we do as a company that I take a lot of pride in is messaging and not traumatizing. Make sure the messaging is clear and gets you emotionally invested, but does not traumatize people.
And people can go to defendsystems.com to find out more.
Yep, sure can.
And of course, your godfearinggunowners.com as well.
Yeah, my apparel side hustle. Yeah.
The not the fashion brand, apparel brand.
Yeah.
As we heard in the beginning.
That's right.
Guys, now you heard it. Those of you listening, watching, this is a worthwhile training. If you're in a big corporation, church, school, anything like that, start this conversation. We're not going backwards. This is definitely some scary times that we're in, that we have to tread carefully. And it's something that's worthwhile to look into. And Brink, there's a reason why I brought him back on, is because he's world-class at what he does. I wouldn't have been knowing him as long as I have if not,
Thanks.
And he wouldn't have been as successful. I hate using that word in the context of what we're talking about here, but your success has increased over the past couple of years because you're good at what you do. You are world-class at it, and you deserve all the accolades, I believe, and the success that's coming your way. And you're doing the world a massive service.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
For what it's worth. Check him out, defendsystems.com and godfearinggunowners.com if you want to check out his apparel. It's really cool stuff there. What's some of the new items that you have there? Anything worth noting?
Yeah, there's a couple popular ones. There's one that just says sheepdog, on the front, and the O in dog is the logo. And for people that haven't seen the brand, the central logo is basically a sniper scope reticle with a cross embedded in it, are combined. And then one that's getting a lot of heads turning is one that says whiskey, tourniquets, Jesus. Mm-hmm. But there's smaller print under each word. But the big words say whiskey, tourniquets, Jesus, which makes everybody's head turn. Like, you put whiskey, tourniquets, and Jesus on a T-shirt. Yes, we did. But when you read the entire thing, it says whiskey can dull the pain, tourniquets can save lives, but only Jesus can save your soul.
Nice.
So
yeah, it's almost like one of those things like live, love, laugh. Maybe you ought to make one of those really kind of like, cursive types of signs that
for the living room wall.
That's right.
It just says whiskey, tourniquets, Jesus. Yeah.
My wife and I are like wondering, we need to make a shirt like that just says really ridiculous, but that,
Yeah.
And also make me fast and accurate.
That's our most popular shirt, the prayer. Yeah. It just says, Lord, make me fast and accurate. Amen. And the O in Lord.
First time I ever saw that was in the Patriot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't, it's funny, when I created the T-shirt, I didn't even remember it from the Patriot. When I was in narcotics, there was a guy I used to work with, his nickname was Peanut, and he was our point guy. So he was the first guy out of the van door, and we'd roll up on a search warrant, and he'd sling the door open and say, "Lord, make us fast and accurate." And the whole van would say, "Amen." Mm-hmm. So that's just where it came from for me. And then it started people like, "This is the Patriot." I'm like, "Is it really?" And I went back and looked, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's good." Yeah. But just the logo again, the if you just see the logo with nothing else, you know what it means.
Yeah.
Like it's so that shirts are still our most popular seller. But yeah, trying to get that brand up and going again, and had to take a little break from it with what happened to my other business.
Well, I mean, you could still take on investors. I mean, I keep on bringing it up.
Yeah, I've heard this. I don't know how many times now. Not there yet, Jim.
Yeah, I think it's going to be, both brands are going to be very, if not already big, very soon. So thanks. Again, guys, defendsystems.com, godfearinggunowners.com. Go check out Brink and all his wares. Follow him, find him, subscribe, rate, review, all that fun stuff. And of course, with us, MMTBP, the Mostly Middle Tennessee Business Podcast, MMTB.com. Do the same for us if you could, if you got any value out of this. If you know somebody that would be good, a good fit for the podcast, that's a local business owner. I get hit up a lot from people that saying, "Hey, I listened to your podcast. It's great," and blah, blah, blah. This person would be fantastic. And you find out that they live in Wyoming. Okay, well, I guess you don't really listen to the podcast. You're just trying to get some guests and plug people. That's not what we do. A lot of the people are native to Middle Tennessee and other areas. Occasionally we'll have somebody that comes in from out of state, but that's up to me because I have an interest in them and we talk to them. So again, check us all at mmtbp.com. Brink, always a pleasure, my friend.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jim. Good to see you.